Good morning, everyone. We are here this morning for the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund Board meeting of Friday, July 7th. It's approximately 9 a.m. Pursuant to the passage of legislation extending the COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, this meeting is closed to the public. However, real-time access to the Affordable Housing and Growth Development Trust Board is available using the posted Zoom link and telephone number. Please note that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30, I, as the chair, must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting, and if so, please make their presence known. All right, seeing none, I'll take a roll call to order. Wendy Northcross.
Present.
Mark Milne.
Present.
Andy Clyburn, present. We're missing Town Manager Els and Laura Schufelt today, but we do have a quorum. So with that, I will move on to public comment. Are there any members of the public here that wish to provide comment to us this morning? Okay, seeing them, we'll jump right into the topics of discussion. Number one on today's agenda is the approval of minutes from the June 2nd, 2023 trust meeting. Wendy?
I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. We will take a roll call vote. Mark Milne?
Yes.
Wendy Northcross?
Yes.
Andy Clyburn, yes. Thank you for that. Thanks as always, Ellen. Well done. Now we'll move into the second item on our agenda today. We have a new application, which is a request for $500,000 of development funding to leverage ARPA and Mass Development funds for adaptive reuse to create collaborative Assistance Resource Center, ARC, a 60-bed health service supported housing first shelter, existing 9,950 square foot vacant commercial structure on 50.56 acres. With us today, we have Cassie from the Housing Assistance Corporation. Cassie, please.
Thank you, Andy. And apologies, Elisa was not able to make it this morning being a holiday week. So I'm jumping in as I was already on the agenda to talk about some of our other programming. But we submitted an application. As you probably know, there has been the desire and the need to move our region's individual shelter, St. Joseph's House, from its current location on Winter Street for many, many years. And we have been attempting to find a suitable relocation site. And one of the things that has happened is during COVID, because of how the current building is laid out, Catholic Social Services, who is the operator who runs St. Joseph's Shelter, had to reduce capacity within the shelter due to social distancing guidelines. And those guidelines have not changed after the pandemic. So what we find is, even with kind of the rest of the world being able to shift back to somewhat normal procedures, the shelter is going to stay reduced capacity moving forward. At the same time, our region is experiencing an increase in homelessness due to the current housing crisis, and the need for beds within that shelter has never been higher. So we have been looking, as the owner of the current shelter, to collaborate with not only Catholic Social Services, but also Duffy Health Center, so that they would be able to start a medical respite center that is embedded within the new shelter, so that we can provide better and greater wraparound services, specifically because we see a high percentage of elderly and disabled individuals attempting to come into the shelter. And so right now, so there's a lot of kind of back and forth with folks needing to go to Cape Cod Hospital ER, be admitted, be discharged to the shelter. The shelter can't support those types of medical needs, so they end up getting referred back. And for the staff at both the hospital and at the shelter, and for the clients, it's definitely an impediment to kind of getting that person to a point where they can exit out of homelessness and become stably housed. So we have identified a site that is appropriate for use. Since this grant application has been submitted, we may have a second site as a backup site. We're currently in our due diligence period for the first site. And so we just want to make sure everything's going to come back engineering wise and, you know, rehab wise and all that kind of stuff. But our goal is by the first of the year or very early within the winter to be able to have the new site, have all the rehabilitation done, have it built out, and have those new services in place. And I feel like I just talked for a very long time. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot them at me.
Certainly, certainly. Wendy, please.
So what's the timeline for completion and first customers? Just
We're
guess.
hoping by January 1. With construction delays, it may be a little bit further than that, but hopefully not too far further than that.
And you have other funding streams already identified to cover the entire cost of the project?
Yeah, we've already applied for Barnstable County's ARPA that's specifically targeted to shelter and homelessness, as well as mass development and Cape Cod healthcare.
So this amounts to 500,000 of a $5 million project, Cassie?
$5.5 million. Yeah.
5.5 million, yeah.
Mark,
Yeah, hi, Cassie. Thank you. What is the anticipated timing notification of the other funding sources for this project?
I believe within the next 6 weeks, but I don't know for sure for all of them individually. Barnstable County ARPA, we believe will take the longest based on our previous experience with their ARPA process for the small and medium grant sizes, but the other two may be a little bit faster.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions, comments for Cassie? Charlie, please.
Thank you. Just two related questions. One is,
Mhm.
can you share with us what the other locale is? And two, what's your timeline to analyze both and make a decision which one you want to go with, or are you thinking going with both in parallel?
Right now, I don't know the specific timeline. Our due diligence period for the one that we have under purchase and sale, I believe, is a 45-day due diligence period, so early August at the latest. And the other property we actually don't have site control over, so I can't share the address at this
Okay.
time. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Is there a timeline within which you think would there be a conditional PNS on the second side, or are you just doing due diligence and see if that takes you to the next step on a PNS?
Yeah, we're doing due diligence right now. We want to make sure everything flushes out.
In terms of your wish list, do you
Mhm.
have internally a timeline that you would hope to complete both and decide which one you want to go with?
By the end of the due diligence period for the first purchase and sale, it would have to be done by that point.
All right. Other questions, comments, discussion? This is a rather robust application. We appreciate that, Cassie. It's going to
Of
take time,
course.
I think, for us all individually to digest this. But I'm sorry, Jillian, did you have your hand up?
I just wanted to ask also the deadlines for the other funding. So I guess that was one of the things we were concerned. If we couldn't vote today or we wanted more time, are we holding things up by not voting or continuing, or?
Our goal would be to know about funding by the end of that due diligence period, which is the end of July.
All right, well, I would offer, and I want to discuss with Mark and Wendy, clearly, we have recently shifted from every other week meetings to monthly, and that was based partly upon not having a robust pool of applications coming in. I would offer, I don't think that we should necessarily vote on this today. I think that, we all need to spend some time digesting the entire application, looking through the evaluation criteria on our own. And then obviously Mark and Laura could view this presentation and perhaps bring this back for a vote at our next meeting. But I would offer that since we now have some application in front of us, perhaps we could consider going to a meeting 2 weeks from now rather than waiting a month. I would offer the 21st of July, which would be 2 weeks. Does that work for Wendy and Mark? Yeah.
Works for me. Mhm.
All right, Cassie, I think, thank you so much for the presentation. As I said, we all need to digest this and go through our evaluation criteria, and we'll welcome you back, assuming that we're able to get it back on the agenda for a meeting on the 21st, and hopefully go from there.
Sure, absolutely. It's
for
big,
joining
exciting
us.
news after so many years of
Yes, yes,
thinking and trying. Yes, for sure.
awesome. Thank you. And you're sticking around with us, correct? I believe.
I am.
Before we move on, was there anything else that we wanted to address with item number 2 this morning? Okay, seeing them, we'll move on to item number 3. Options to provide ongoing funding support for rental assistance and adaptive reuse. Again, we'll turn to you, Cassie, please.
Sure. I spoke with Jillian kind of about some of the programs and services that we offer that may be of interest, just kind of knowing what's available in the community. And I want to talk about 2 specific categories and then a couple different programs. And the first category is our rental assistance pools. We administer a variety of state and federal housing vouchers, but then we also have funding available for households throughout Barnstable, Dukes, and Nantucket counties who are experiencing more of a one-time kind of difficulty. And that one-time difficulty doesn't mean 1 month, it could mean 4 months, it could mean 6 months. But we have a state-funded program called RAFT that can provide up to $7,000 in emergency assistance directly to the vendor. Could be utility company, could be landlord, could be a mortgage company for homeowners. And to be eligible for that program, households need to be under 50% AMI, under 60% AMI if they are fleeing domestic violence, or kind of a new pandemic, post-pandemic qualification, if they're receiving any type of DTA benefits, SNAP, cash assistance, TAFTC, EAFTC, or have Mass Health Standard, they are automatically income eligible. The state decided during the pandemic that if there was already due diligence being done on income verification through those other programs, we didn't need to duplicate their efforts in order to try to qualify them for the RAFT program. And then they need to have some type of eligible housing crisis. So they need to be homeless, trying to move into a unit, and need help with things like first, last security, furniture, getting utilities turned on, that kind of, those kind of startup costs. And then for someone who is already in an apartment, if they need help with back rent, they need to either have a notice to quit issued from their landlord or have some summary process for eviction. If they're a homeowner and they're 90 days or more behind, or any further down that path towards foreclosure, we can step in and help. Or if they have a utility shutoff or are nearing utility shutoff, we can assist as well. We know that some folks are not going to be eligible under those rules. So we also have a workforce housing relief fund that we actually launched very early in the pandemic. Because we weren't sure exactly what was going to happen with governmental support. Turns out they stepped in, they provided a really robust benefit through federal funding. So we actually have funding remaining for our Workforce Housing Relief Fund, which also has a $7,000 limit and is available for renters and homeowners. And that program can help with things like back taxes, utilities, rental payments, mortgage payments. But the criteria to qualify is a little bit looser because it's an individually privately funded program. And then our longest running program is actually our private prevention program. It's been in place, it will be 40 years, I think, next year. And that program provides a lower level of funding, and it's kind of scaled based off the individual's housing costs. So the cap for that program is either $1,000 or whatever 1 month's rent is, which we are seeing rents in the 2,000s and 3,000s unfortunately, right now. So that program is a little bit more flexible because we have complete and total control over it and have for years. And so we can help with, again, startup costs, rental payments. A big cost for that program is actually furniture for households who are transitioning from homelessness to being housed. There are not a lot of programs that have flexible enough funding to buy things like beds. And what we're seeing right now is the rental costs are so high that the programs that can provide that, we're using all of those money, all of those funds for first, last, and security. And that's kind of totaling $7,000 through Raft and Workforce. And then we can step in with private and provide some additional funding there. So those programs are really for kind of one time, something happened. We've seen anything from, unfortunately, a household member has passed away and the household income has decreased to, we live on the Cape. Cars corrode very quickly. They need an emergency car repair, their brakes rent, and they had to put $7,000 towards, or $700 towards getting new brakes, and they weren't able to pay that $700 towards rent. We also have an ongoing rental assistance program that I want to talk about, which is called Thrive. And it's a program that pairs a shallow rental subsidy for someone who is cost burden on their rent. So they're paying more than 30% of their income towards their rent, and housing counseling services. The goal of the program is to be a 2-year program so that households receive 24 months of that assistance while working with that housing counselor to work on some individualized either housing or financial related goals. That program launched last July, so we have almost a full year's worth of data. And what we're seeing is folks are working on anything from kind of paying down debt so that they're able to afford the housing costs a little bit better and get their budget in a better place, to folks that have really leveraged the funds and are now talking about affordable home ownership, saving up for a down payment for a house, and trying to get into kind of a more stable living environment. That program was launched through ARPA funding. I just lost my train of thought. ARPA funding, United Way funding, and Belzikian Family Foundation funding. And the first year of that program has been targeted to employees in specific occupations. What we did is, given the housing crisis, we looked at the types of employees that allowed other individuals to continue to work and live here. And so we targeted childcare workers and workers who work with the developmentally disabled. Now that we kind of have a year under our belts, we are looking at expanding funding. We have run a very similar program that's funded through the town of Brewster that provides that shallow rental subsidy per month and then ongoing services to help stabilize the household. And so that's something that we're looking at moving forward to see if we can make that a more robust offering for the region. And then our last program, and then I'll shush for a little bit and you guys can have some questions if you have any, is our ADU program. One of the things we're always looking at are ways to increase inventory. We know that building is difficult and is a challenge for multiple reasons. And so we received some ARPA funding during the pandemic to launch and then continue an ADU program where we are providing a fairly robust subsidy to households that are able to build an ADU within their property and then rent out year round to tenants. It's scaled based off a number of factors, and I'm happy to share the application if anyone is interested. But we looked at a lower amount of a financial incentive for folks that weren't necessarily kind of living and working on Cape Cod themselves, didn't necessarily have any interest in renting to someone who may be a voucher holder or maybe a lower or moderate income household. And so we scaled it. So the folks that are building an ADU and adding inventory is great. They get one stipend amount. And then the folks that are really going to help kind of our highest need populations and support the region are getting a higher amount of a stipend. And then I'll pause because again, I felt like
That
I
was
just
a lot,
a
Cassie.
long time.
Thank you. We have any questions for Cassie? Wendy?
So Cassie, that's a great overview. Thank you very much. The ADU program that's scaled. So I understand the part where you're helping more for excuse me, for housing that is going to support our essential workforce and our economy. But the other half is for, I mean, anybody is like market rate ADU rentals. Is that the other?
Correct. It has to be a year-round rental. We're not going to support any, short-term rental creation.
Right.
But there are different points for, if the household is employed by a company that's based in Dukes, Nantucket, or Barnstable counties. And I'm happy to share the application if anyone has interest in looking at it.
Yeah, if you could send that to Jillian for distribution, that'd be
Sure.
fantastic.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Do you also have, sorry, Mr. Chair, through you,
No,
do
please.
you also have like a toolkit for homeowners to understand not just the financing part, but the actual, what do you have to do next? Permitting, what kind of constraints you might have with your septic system. Do you have that as well?
Yes, and it's interesting because when we first launched the program, the intention was to provide a lot of technical assistance and the financial incentive and kind of pair those two together.
Okay.
What we found after a year, 2 years of running the program is because every town has different rules, and really every single plot of land may qualify under those different rules. The intensity of providing very individualized technical assistance was something that the funding could not support long term. And kind of our philosophy is if we get to a point where, there is zoning by right and things are a little clearer, that type of individualized technical assistance will become much, much easier. But right now we've had to shift to providing kind of more general technical assistance and then the financial incentive just in order to make the program sustainable.
That's interesting. So it might be that we actually look at the town levels to create those toolkits for homeowners. We could feed that through to you all, or vice versa. You could help us with some of that, and we could help fill in the blanks. Because I think that there's a growing desire to do things out there, and I just continue to talk about my own experiences. Like I think I can create some ADUs, and I'm a relatively smart person and knows some people.
Yeah.
But it's like, to me, it's like spaghetti, and I just need.
It is so convoluted. Yes.
So,
and what we're seeing is it's so convoluted. Obviously, whether the property is on septic or sewer makes a huge difference. But also the construction costs are so astronomical that a lot of folks, even if they can get through kind of the technical stuff, if they purchased their home in 1998 and they're like, well, okay, I bought my home for $180,000. You're telling me this 1-bedroom ADU is going to cost me $250,000. It can be a really hard pill to swallow, we will just say. But we're also looking at, we worked with some lenders to try to get some more flexible funding opportunities available, to try to support that, because that cost is a big impediment for people. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have Paula Schnepp with us. Paula, please.
Thank you,
Paula.
Andy. Hi, Cassie. Just a couple more follow-up questions on the ADU program. Do you have any statistics yet of how many you've been able to assist? How many ADUs have actually, at least gone to the point where construction might be happening?
Yeah, where we're doing the financial incentive. I want to say our numbers as of last week, where we had done, I want to say 8, and then we had a couple more in the pipeline. But yeah, definitely smaller numbers compared to some of our other programs, like our rental assistance programs, for sure.
Right. And Are there ways that folks could use their existing footprint to create an ADU? And because, the construction costs are really out of sight. And so creating a separate unit, I think, can sometimes be really prohibitive. But I'm
Yes.
just wondering, the older version of ADU was within the existing
Yep.
footprint of the house.
Yep, and it could be existing footprint, it could be connected to the main residence, and it can be completely detached. When we actually did our first one, which was kind of our pilot, it was basically a built-out basement that happened and was incredibly successful because it didn't have the huge construction cost associated with it. And what we're seeing is some people trying to be flexible. They may have a 3-bedroom house on a 3-bedroom septic, but they may not need all 3 bedrooms. And so they're looking at, is there a way to add an additional entrance to a 1-bedroom, turn it into a studio, and get an ADU out of the same property within the same footprint with much lower construction costs. But yes, people are trying to be, and unfortunately having to be, very creative and innovative when they're trying to figure it out.
Right. I noticed, I don't know what neighborhood I was driving through, but somebody was creating an ADU, and I think there was a company that was doing it, like all in one. Do you work with companies that promote doing ADU construction?
Yeah, we have a list of contractors and companies. We aren't able to kind of legally make any recommendations, but yes, they are available, and depending on the circumstances, may have sooner availability than some of just kind of the general contractors.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Cassie. Do we have any other questions for Cassie? Charlie?
Thank you. Cassie, just one quick question. What's the level of support on an ADU? What in dollar amounts?
The lower level of an incentive is $10,000 and the higher level is $20,000.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Cassie? Thank you so much for joining us today. Very, very informative. Look forward to getting that follow-on information through Jillian.
Yeah.
And we'll see you we'll see you back in a couple weeks.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Cassie. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Moving on to the next item on today's agenda, we have the trust administrators update. Jillian, please.
Well, I wanted to report that we did have the fair marketing lottery that was conducted on the 28th of June. And it was done both in person and Zoom. So we had Hilda Hay from the Housing Committee as an observer, and it went very well. There were 28 numbers drawn and assigned. And so we're waiting to see, hopefully that's in progress with the management company to get all of those leased up for the 10 affordable units. The reason that there were, I guess I'll just, my own expectation was that there would be more applications and more eligible applications. I think what we experienced was that because those were 50% AMI, it was a difficult criteria to meet. So there were, I want to say, I think there, and I hadn't gotten the number yet back from Paula Stewart, but I believe there were a total of 80 applications that were filed or submitted, many incomplete, which disqualified them, but also many that dropped out because of the tight constraints on the income. So that is hopefully coming along, and we'll have 10 new residents soon. So cheers to us.
Yeah, thanks, Jillian.
And let's see, then the other, the Community Preservation Committee, the Barnstable Community Preservation Committee is going to be holding its annual meeting on the 17th of this month, which is a Monday. And they've invited me to attend. I'm going to take that opportunity to do my update. My reports, I think, as you guys have known, have been a little delayed here. One of the things was we switched and we were trying to sequence our reporting to semi-annual with the calendar and fiscal. But I think at this point, I will give them an update of what we've been doing to date in the time that I've been here. And then I just invite you, if anybody else has any particular messages or anything you'd like me to ask or convey at the meeting, please feel free to feed things through me. And again, it probably just more like a conversation with them than a real presentation of things, but basically just a coordination, if you will. And that was all I had at the moment. I just invite you all to keep feeding me topics. I hope this was useful just because I thought the comparison between the quickest response that we are seeing, rent assistance does seem to be an urgent need. It's a fastest. It's a program that if the trust wanted to allocate funding towards, you have that capacity. And then ADUs was a thing that, clearly it's a smaller, a reduced productivity. You don't get as many units, but they are long-term sustainable housing that we can create if we wanted to support programs with that. And the other is with the state level, if lenders can, I know the state is working on trying to come up with mortgage assistance that would allow people to do repairs and construction to existing housing stock, and that there may be a way to tap them for affordability. In other words, put a deed restriction on some of either the added construction or the whole property. So those are other options. Thank you for the opportunity to bring you that in.
Thanks, Jillian. Do we have any questions for Jillian? All right, we'll move along. The next item is planning and development update. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Assistant Town Manager Clyburn. On the housing side, I've been working with lotteries for 3 units at 310 Barnstable Road as part of the residential conversion of that mostly vacant office building, as well as working with Hanover on their 269 unit project out on the park. So getting those affordable units online. Asset management and planning have made excellent progress on issuing an RFP for the town-owned property at 164 Route 149 for development and resale for 2 single-family affordable homeownership units. So we expect that RFP to post as soon as next week, I believe, with responses due mid-October. So put a lot of effort into that as sort of a model for issuing RFPs for housing for municipal properties. So hopefully that speeds along some of the others, including ones that we've talked about here at the trust, including the first one next to the police station, at least in terms of process and checklist. So looking forward to results on that. And we can, I'm very happy to say we continue to report excellent housing production numbers as a result of the downtown zoning. In the last, I would say 5 to 7 business days, we've done an additional 52 units anticipated coming online that I haven't talked about before. So and again, at levels significantly below market, I think, than what we've seen coming in. One is a conversion and complete redevelopment of a major property on Main Street, and the other one is infill development behind an existing single family home. So really great project. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Elizabeth. Do we have any questions for Elizabeth this morning? All right, moving on. Topics for future.
Andy, I think Wendy has.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, Wendy, please.
sorry, I was on mute. I'm talking to my screen on mute. So that's great news, Elizabeth. I just want to make sure you said there are 52 units in the downtown area that were on top of what you already had mentioned in the past.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Right. So I think last time I reported, just doing it in my head, and they were probably up to, we've got a 100 unit project at Cascade. We've got a 124 unit project at TD Bank. We have a 50 unit project at another vacant site. And those are the big ones. Again, we did another 52 units in 2 projects just within the last couple of days. So we'll package all of those up and make sure we're sort of reporting out on the productivity of that new zoning.
Yeah,
That's
that's
great.
fantastic, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Okay. Next item is topics for meetings on future agendas. Jillian, what do we have here?
Well, I just wanted to know if the trust wanted to do anything further to formalize. We do have that, the funding that's the CPA funding that was previously allocated for buy down. So we have sort of a program in place. Any development or any unit that has a deed restriction and a monitoring agent, they are notifying the town if something comes up for resale. Primarily, those have been coming through Housing Assistance Corps. And so we have just plain doing what we need to do to fill the gap if they apply for the funding that has been allocated. Those funds, because they were originally CPA, obviously they're running low. I think we're down to about 35,000 that's left there. So I think the intent from your previous discussion was that we'll continue that program by allocating the funding that we already have. And I guess that if you did want to do anything further, some towns have an application process for that. I guess I didn't feel that's necessary. I think it's kind of moving along. It's streamlined. It's less impediments if they just come through staff. But I offer that out just to question as to formalizing or continuing as we are. You don't have to vote on that. It was just it was sort of a topic for consideration, I guess, at this point.
Is it worth us discussing at the next meeting? Should we put that on the agenda for discussion?
Okay.
Yeah, I think this group gave some really good guidance on that last time, and Jillian and I have sort of talked about an in-between approach that, is sort of a memorandum that lays out all the steps that somebody would need to do to access those funds. Again, with the recommendation that they would be exercised administratively, but making sure that the trust had oversight that that process was up to expectation.
Okay. I'd offer we should have that on the agenda then for discussion.
Perfect. I'll work with Jillian.
What's the other item, Jillian?
The other one was Provincetown special legislation. This has to do with year-round deed restrictions, and I guess I'm not sure that's passed yet. I think it's still in conference. And I guess that at this point, I just didn't know if that was something that you wanted to delve into, wanted more information about. They have presented several articles that all passed in Provincetown that have to do with things related to short-term rentals and focusing on incentivizing year-round rental units. And I'll collect up some stuff if you'd like, but and it doesn't even have to be agenda. If you want, I can just feed you that. But if you wanted to delve into it, I would try to have someone that's a little more knowledgeable to come and speak to you about that if you want.
My preference, what I would offer is perhaps you can gather what's available, send it out, and then have it at the next meeting as another potential for a follow-on meeting after we've had a chance to review it, rather than putting it on for the next meeting.
Very good. Thank you. And that
Any
was all I had. Unless you have other issues, please feel free to feed them to me and I'll keep bringing them back.
Okay, well, obviously, we've got an application in front of us at the next meeting, so
Right.
you can make sure that I know I received it. I'm assuming everyone else received the application. It's a bit to get through, so please, if we could dedicate some time, if you could follow up with Mark and Laura as well to make sure they have everything they need as far as evaluation criteria.
Yeah.
Would be great. All right, any matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair? All right, seeing none, the next meeting date, as previously discussed, will be in 2 weeks, Friday, the 21st. Elizabeth, Jillian, Ellen, you'll make sure it's posted appropriately and we're good to go. All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second,
All right, roll call. Wendy Northcross,
Yes.
Mark Mellon,
yes.
Andy Clyburn, yes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Stay cool.